27 years to the day ago, on Columbus Day, 1993, Saint Germain gave a dictation that changes a lot of people's minds. It's the basis upon which we live. He says, "Now then, beloved, let us consider your discovery of a new continent. It is the continent of the mind of God. It is the continent of the mind of God. It is a new level of awareness. It is the path you have chosen to break the mold of the finite condition while you are in it, and to enter into the infinite condition here and now in the body, which is yours today. This is my offering to you. I say, let us do it. I show you now the records of Akasha. I show you the continent of Atlantis in its earlier golden age. Do you see it? Do you see it? Very important. I show you then the records of adepts, walking the streets, teaching in the universities, setting an example as sons and daughters of the solitude. Sons and daughters of the solitude. Where have we heard that before? Oh, surely you've heard the story of Rai Ernan. Rai Ernan was I guess you could say, the president of a country where India is today. Many millions of people. He was one of the sons and daughters of the solitude. He loved his people so much that he placed upon their home tables every day, and the meals, the food. They didn't have to do anything. They just sat down and ate. Wouldn't that be great to have somebody who actually loves you so much that they just put it on the table? You know, Saint Germain can do that. You've heard the stories. How he sat down, he would sit down with you and we would talk. When it was time to eat, all at once it just appeared on the table. Man, that was great, except the people got to resent it. They didn't get to fix their own food. This man could do almost anything. He was an adept. And you know the story. The neighboring king knew that Rai Ernan didn't have an army. He didn't need one. And so the neighboring king decided, I'll just go over and I'll just take the kingdom away from him. And so he, with his 2,000 huge soldiers, come clanging in. As they came down, of course, Rai Ernan, being who he was, knew what was happening. And so he was walking down this road, dressed like an old man, shabby, beard. And the king came up on his horse with his 2,000 men behind him. And he said, "Hey, old man, tell me, where's your king? I've come to take over your kingdom." And Triernan sort of joked with him a little bit until the man got very irritated. And he said, "You don't tell me where your king is. I'm going to just slay you and go on." At which point, Triernan raised his eyes to heaven, gave God thanks for the power that he was about to use, and then raised his hand, and the 2,000 soldiers dropped dead. And then we had this mess. So he raised them back up again, even though they were dead. They clanked down to the river, walked into the river and floated down the river. And then very quietly, he looked to his assistant and said, "Arrest this man, put him in prison." Wouldn't that be something? When I read that story, I thought, you and I ought to be there. We ought to be sons and daughters of God. Why aren't we? What's holding us back? And then I read the next sentence. Listen carefully. Yes, beloved, all those records are there. Even the records of yourselves, you and I, having so done and so accomplished, having come so far upon the path of individual self-mastery. What did he say? You and I were there as sons and daughters. Sons and daughters of forget the word. Sons and daughters of the solitude. Sons and daughters of the solitude. You and I have been there. We have been those people. So what's our excuse? Every time I read something like this, I get a pain in here. How did I goof? Where did I come short? Why aren't I able to do it now? You read about others that can do it. Here's a man called St. Francis of Paoli. Phenomenal man. His parents couldn't get, her mother couldn't get pregnant. And she was so disturbed because of it. She finally went down to the church, fell on her face in front of the altar and said, "St. Francis, if you will give me a child, I will dedicate his life to you. I will give him to the church to raise. He will be yours." Immediately she got pregnant. When he was born, strange things were happening. You could see on the ridge of the house, fire. Very, very interesting. As soon as he could be freed from his mother's breast, she gave him to the church to raise. As he grew up, as a child, he began to work in the kitchen. Strange things happening. He would take coals from the kitchen and take it into the chapel to light the candles. all at once, one day they saw, here he came, holding the coal in his hands or in his robe. It wasn't burning him, but he was holding this red hot coal, and they lit, and they said, how can he do this? What's going on with this guy? He would get so involved in the worship that he would forget to fix the lunch. And that was really bad news. So they would really get on him. Why haven't you been down getting lunch? And so he would rush down to the kitchen. They only had fire in the fireplace to cook by. But in 15 minutes, the food was ready, and they couldn't figure it out. How did he do this? When he became 12, it was time for him to decide whether he wanted to commit himself as a monk. He decided, no, I want my freedom. At the back part of his parents' property, there was a little stream, and there was a broken down shack. And part of that broken down shack was fixed so that there's no rain coming in. He said, I want to live there by himself. So all he could do was just meditate. The children of the city would come by. They heard about this fellow who sat in there by himself, and they would come in and look in. As he became more and more developed, young men would say, can I stay with you? So it kept growing and growing until finally he had to build a building for this. So sure enough, because of his spiritual connection, somebody who had money donated money for his first building. As they were building it, he was in meditation. The workers got hungry. Now, Francis had a fish in a small pond. It was his pet, and he would spend time with him. Well, the workers saw that. They decided to catch the fish and cook it and eat it for lunch. When the brothers saw what happened, they just didn't want to say anything, but they had to, so they told him. He was quite sorrowful, and he said, go out and give me the bones, every bone that you can find, bring it to me. So they brought him the skeleton. Everybody went to bed except him. And the next morning, the fish was again swimming in the pool. This is happening all through his life. The government actually began to respect him. And when Spain decided to attack and take over Italy, where he lived, they came to him and said, can you help us? We can't, they're too big for us. We can't do this. Can you protect us? He said, we'll see. And he went into meditation. And it never happened. Somehow the Armada was turned away. Can you see yourself in that kind of a situation? As an adept, can you understand what it feels like to be able to do these kind of things? Because you're connected. This is what it means to be a son and daughter of the solitude. He said, I could show you at the Grand Teton in my chambers there, and in the cave of symbols, what would appear to you as motion pictures of those days where you should see yourselves as you were. And more than this, beloved, where you could see yourselves actually in the higher levels of being, and then note your manifestation of the time, and then note your manifestation of this day. Pain. Pain. It could almost be said, he said, but not quite, that the best part of you is above you. But because you have drawn a certain level of your Christ self and your God consciousness into this mind and body and heart and soul, truly, a goodly portion of your best and highest self is here tonight. Therefore, I address all of you. Now, I remember there was quite a crowd there. This was a conference. So, was he addressing all of the crowd? Or was he addressing my four lower bodies, my different levels of consciousness, all of me? We could probably say it was both. He said, I would that by your presence in the earth and by your determination from this day forward to the hour of your transition or ascension, that you would make it your business to present yourself in the highest capacity possible for the manifestation of your Christ self. If I am the Christ, why don't I act like it? If I am the Christ, and I have been in those higher levels of consciousness and have taught people in those higher consciousness, why don't I discipline myself in this time, in this moment, as the Christ manifestation? This very presence in the earth of thousands upon thousands of you will lighten the planetary weight. It should also thin the veil so that some, especially those who follow behind you in certain dietary practices, meditations, and giving the mantras, and so forth, these ones, beloved, shall have the veil parted, even as we have parted the veil, so that you could see the messenger at inner levels. You know, it occurs to me that until we actually are willing to set aside time to look into the inner veils, to actually develop that inner awareness, we're not going to get it. He said, we will now part the veil so that many in the earth who are moving toward the Aquarian age consciousness might see your auras, see your chakras, and see your light Some of them already do, beloved. And then he says, and I don't mind telling you that for some of you, I would prefer that they did not see your auras. For sometimes you carry those records of recent events that surely you are not in keeping with your own personal honor flame. Part the veil. We're doing it a lot of times now. Your decrees are parting the veil. We do the cloud, which parts the veil we're moving in. We do the energy transference, which we're doing tonight. We're doing these kind of things already, moving toward that point of mastery. But you must carry it on further in your own personal life. Your thoughts. If you can fill your thoughts totally with that which is of the kingdom, all the rest falls away. But when your thoughts begin to be so filled with what you do in the daytime, and you forget this other thing, suddenly we find ourselves not where we should be. Thus, communication is at an all-time high in the United States and the world. Yet, it has not reached the levels that it was in the golden age of Atlantis. The communication of who you are and what you are is known at the soul level. Your soul knows clearly and precisely what is the vibration, what is the pattern of every soul of the many people whom you meet, whether within or without the community. You watch a new baby. You carry him in your arms. He's looking over your back. He sees somebody. He smiles, he maybe giggles, or he starts crying. Even though the person has a smile on their face, he sees what's in the aura. He sees the vibration of the person. Now, you and I, when we were first born, could do that. But then mommy and daddy said, oh, don't be so sensitive. This guy's okay. You don't have to be afraid of him. Oh, yeah. Mommy and daddy don't want you to become something that other people will laugh at. So you ignore it until you don't sense it anymore. Yet your soul senses it. When I first started going on the road, some of the very first things that we were working with was we would demonstrate to people that you have chakras all over your body, and you can sense from those chakras all this vibration he's talking about. And so we would demonstrate, we would take the group of 12 or 15, 18, whatever we had, and we would go around and we would shake their hands. And then we would tell them what we would pick up. And people would say, how do you do that? Well, just start doing it. If we can begin to see that we can know all kinds of things, put your hand someplace where someone else was just leaning against. You can see all kinds of things about them. You can know whether they're telling the truth or not by that inner awareness coming through the different chakras, seeing, feeling, hearing, sensing. He said also, you also, at the soul level, take a reading of me, Saint Germain. And I stand here this night, and you take a reading of the messenger as well. And you are here more because of what you know at inner levels and in the soul level of being than what you know with the reasoning mind. The reasoning mind is subject to error, but the soul always knows the new continent that he's talking about. And this is where you and I really need to do some work. He said thus, it is well to remember that the soul is seated in the seventh ray chakra of the violet flame, and to keep the soul bathed in violet flame, to strengthen that soul for the rise from the chakra to the heart chakra, preparing for union with the Holy Christ self. He said, now then, beloved, another year is turning and the decade moves on. And I come then to tell you that in addition to all other services you render, the greatest service you can render on earth is to be among those who presage the coming age of enlightenment, when thousands and millions of people will have this inner sight. You must develop not only inner sight, but also the auric force field that will be the great magnet to those who truly desire and have a singular aspiration to ascend to the throne of God in this embodiment. Therefore, I come from the retreat of my mentor and yours, the great divine director. This retreat is in the Himalayas, and I often retreat there and go into meditation and even into nirvana for periods of time. So, beloved, I invite you in the name of the great divine director to come to his retreat this night, for we would tutor you at inner levels and bring in your remembrance those incarnations that you have lived in the East, when you learned the practices of the mastery of the body, the mastery of diet, the mastery of the chakras, the mastery of the sacred fire of the Divine Mother raised upon the spinal altar. To pursue adeptship is wise. For as it has been spoken so many times, there comes times and events and cycles and years in life that are written in the future that shall be challenging times for you, and you meet the most difficult levels of your personal karma and deal with planetary karma itself. Just look at the news. Just look at yourself in the mirror. Just look at the challenges you face day by day by day. And we aren't even realizing part of them, we flaunt them. He said, it is wise then that in the full years you gather to yourself such momentum, storing within the cells of being, within your four lower bodies, but especially within your chakras and in the aura of your Christhood, much light, much wisdom, much experience, much seeking after Chilaship, much sharpening of the mind, that you might be a tool of an instrument of the great hierarchies, adepts you know, and some whose names you have never heard, and yet they frequent this place as often and as sometimes more often than the masters whose names you are familiar with. Understand, beloved, it is a principle of saving for a rainy day, of sowing and harvesting for a long winter, and recognizing that until you are home, free, after you ascend, until that time, you must be prepared to meet and any and all challenges of the body, the mind, the soul, the spirit, the community, and the planet on which you live. Happy are ye when you understand that these cycles do come, and when you pass through them victoriously without so much as a scar of the battle. You will know that you are making headway, that you are triumphing over mortal conditions, and that you are preparing for a mighty service. I think it was several weeks ago I preached a sermon that was from a dictation by Lanello. And if you remember, he said, my last incarnation was the hardest one. It became so hard that there were times when I actually wondered whether I was going to make it or not. Haven't you had that same feeling? If we aren't prepared for some of these very difficult times, and I'm going through one right now for myself, very difficult to hold everything in alignment. Well, I want to complain. I want to question, why am I going through this? He said, happy are ye when you understand that these cycles come. So we have heard the messenger's recognition of the sponsors that have gone before. Realize that in each of these sponsors, who are we talking about? Moria, Lanello, Mother, Mary, Jesus, etc. We can keep on going. So name these are the prototype of what you can be. You must not look around to Godfrey or Lanello, to your present messenger or the ascended masters as unique, special, exceptional individuals. You must know, beloved, that all who have been in embodiment in the service of the Great White Brotherhood have borne the burden of their karma, have been bowed down with that karma, have struggled with it, have wrestled with it, have been relentless, have determined, have been absolutely convinced that they would triumph, and they have gone on and on and on. But beloved ones, all of us, when in embodiment, had our weak moments. The moments when we could almost go into despair and utterly despondency. Yes? Agree? Yes. And we, too, knew friends. And we, too, recognized the dawn after a long night of prayer and the sun beaming through. And we realized that there was yet hope. And we would go on as we were being challenged and mocked and crucified and tried and burned at the stake, etc., etc. You have been through these experiences also. Do not weary in them. There's more to come. Don't allow yourself just to get fed up, tired of this. No, don't allow that. Do not consider that somehow God now owes you a lifetime of a lap of luxury. I tell you, the hound of heaven will continue to pursue you, and you must not call, time out, I'm tired. Yes, you must not say, I deserve this or that. And in this life, because I have sacrificed enough for you, Saint Germain or Maitreya or Sana Kamara. Let those who are your mentors of the Spirit determine what is best for you. As has been said of Gautama, we are doctors. We know what is the best medicine for the spirit and the body and the mind, to bring that soul to that point where there is truly the opportunity for union with God. We see from a different level than the level from which you see. Realize that. Beloved, you surely know that you have limited vision, and that limited vision does not enable you to assess righteous judgment. Righteous judgment can only come when you are in the mind of God. Therefore I say, judge not, but welcome every point of adversity. Be profoundly grateful for gifts as they come and intercession, but never take for granted either, for both must be part of the path. I must say that we are proud of our chelas, many of you, and do not think that we do not see, that we do not watch, that we do not regard each and every one of you. We have assigned our angels to you, angels of chelaship. Of course, you may banish them, but our recording angels and your specific recording angel are under orders from the Brotherhood not to stray from you, for the records must be complete. So what's he saying? We always have angels around us. We always have a crowd around us. Oh, when you understand all of this and you're walking down the street, people stop and look because they sense all this light coming down because the angels are right there. You are considered Sheilas on the path, and therefore consider each day as a day that you write the book of life, and that your recording angel does write in the book of life. All things count, and God always sees. When you are held, when you when you are able to keep on keeping on without a pat on the back by someone in embodiment, I tell you, you receive 3 times, thrice from the spiritual realms of those angels who uphold you and who give you the stimulus to go forward again and again and again. Have you not noticed, beloved ones, as you count your victories in this life, and as the years pass and you become wiser, and you are more in the strength of God, more in the trust of God, more in the faith of God, that you are absolutely not moved. And when you see these initiations coming, you see them for what they are, and you meet the challenge, and you apply to it everything you know, everything you have been taught, all that it comes through the teachings. So is it not so, beloved, that you have become accustomed to that support? And you now have faith in God that he will never, never let you down as long as you do not let him down or your neighbor, or as long as you do not discontinue loving your neighbor as you love your own real self, capital R, real self. Now then, beloved, to accelerate your inner spiritual God mastery, I come. For I am convinced beyond all shadow of a doubt that the ingredients whereby the world shall be magnetized to the ascended masters through you, and it will be through you, or it will not be at all, beloved, for the world cannot see us, but they can surely see you. I am convinced, therefore, that the necessary ingredient whereby you are able to convert many to the path of light is the ingredient of love, of compassion, of kindness, of concern and care and consideration for each part of life. Love is what people are seeking. Secondly, then, it is a certain level of self-mastery whereby you have self-respect, and those who see you also respect you because they recognize that you have your self-esteem, you have your self-worth, and in that self-worth, you can reach out with the magnanimous heart of your Lord Jesus, Maitreya and Baba Sambhava, of your Lord Manjushri, Gautama, Sanakamaram. You reach out in strength, in confidence and love, with the magnanimity of heart, with the openness and love and givingness, replacing naivety and supercilious sympathetic animal magnetism, casting this aside and developing developing a profound and deep love for everyone. For above all, you recognize that point of the seed of the Buddha, that point of the Atman, that presence emerging. You see it coming from the person. They're beginning to open up. And you speak to the soul. And you never mind what the outer self has experienced. Take that in. Take this in. This is another aspect of self-mastery, beloved. Human beings change every day. The outer self has moods, its ups and downs, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, sometimes in this and that direction. And another day, and the same individual will be positive and ready to join the team and go to work and accomplish such and such, because they now have the vision. It is good then to remember the words, "What is that to thee? Follow thou me." It is good to ignore, almost without revealing that you are ignoring, almost, the outer self that comes and goes, to count on the inner Christ, and to continue to reaffirm and reaffirm and reaffirm that Christ, despite all other expressions to the contrary on the part of that individual. I'll never forget, I came to visit one of my parishioners. I was ready to knock on the door and I heard screaming on the inside. They were fighting each other. And when I knocked on the door and pushed the bell, there was this silence. And finally, one came to open the door, and there was the pastor. Tremendous feelings. I said, "May I come in?" They said, "Well, I guess so." My job in that moment was to bring the Christ. My job at that moment was to smooth out the feelings. And when I was ready to leave, we made a little circle and we held hands and we had a prayer. When I left, there was joy. If we can understand this is what the world needs, it's not the shouting, it's not the criticism, it's not the words that are being spoken. And yet, listen to the news. He said this, he said that, he said this, he said that. It isn't what is said. It's what's happening underneath. It's what's moving in the overall. You will see the endurance of continuously reinforcing the right, the good, the true, the beautiful, and letting pass by those barbs which long ago would have caused you to feel challenged, making you feel that you must defend your good name, having a good fight with someone to show who has the upper hand, and all of those ins and outs. And boy, do I relate to that. When I come out of seminary, I was a fighter. I could tell you exactly where you were wrong and why I was right. And it took a lot of banging around, being pushed around supposedly, till I could begin to see every man has a right to his own feelings and being. And my job is not to tell him what is wrong necessarily, but to show him the higher way in my own being. Blessed ones, gossip travels here, gossip travels there. People talk about this one and that one, and who is doing what. What it all boils down to is this: when you are with an individual who has interest in the path, who knows the teachings, in other words, one who may be a disciple or a quasi-disciple on the path, simply continually reinforce the good in that one. Let pass all negatives. Do not even give them the time of day. Do not address them except to comfort, uplift, and show the individual that there is a bright sun on the horizon and a rainbow after the rain. Continue in being positive with people, beloved, and you will find that by and by you will have no enemies, for you will simply not have acknowledged that they are enemies. And you are continuously affirming the rightness, the truth, and the reality that God has placed in each and every one. This is magnanimity of heart. To be magnanimous, to me, is to set aside and ignore and put away any seeming faults of another. Be magnanimous. Simply support the love and give recognition. Give recognition to the I am presence and Holy Christ self of that one. Give recognition to the good and the accomplishments of the soul. Breathe a prayer for the balancing of that one's threefold flame and your own. And above all, do not waste your time in repeating stories about this and that. What is that to thee? Follow thou me. I am Saint Germain. These are the words of Jesus Christ. They are the words of my Son. They are your words. Follow them and continue following. Bless life. Do not mentally criticize others. Do not mentally criticize others. It is the great disease of planet Earth. In fact, it is why many individuals have re-embodied here so many times. It is that criticism that continues and continues in malicious gossip. I tell you, have no part with it. And remember, it is the law of the Darjeeling retreat of your own El Moria. Don't be then a naysayer. You know, it's so hard this right now to discern where this stops. I just got notice some time ago. Pray because they're feeding the president wrong medicine and it's going to harm him. Pray. The first thing I did was say, Lanello, is this true? I heard, no. Do you want me to continue this thing of passing this thing? No. Okay. But those who passed it on, this is doubt, this is fear, this is criticism. Who starts something like this? Can be the fallen ones. If we can get you to pray against something, then it won't work. But all of us see the miracle that happened with that medicine. So how do we handle this? When do we pass it on and when we don't? The moment you get something like this, stop. Because you're going to be responsible for passing it on. You're going to pay the price spiritually. So the first thing you do is to stop and say, is this true? If you hear no, then you know what to do. If all else fails and you don't know what to do, write a note and burn it to the karmic board, to any of the masters who do know what the real is. Ask them, or not tell them, just tell them, here's what I heard, you might want to work with this. Give it to the master. Let him do it. But watch, don't pass things on that you cannot prove yourself. It could very well be harmful for you. This does not mean that you are not compassionate, but it does mean that you must be on guard. For there are harmful individuals in the world, but you are there to amplify the good and to call for the binding of forces of malice that may have invaded that one's aura centuries ago. And that individual has not the slightest idea how to extricate himself from that force. And you come along and you pour some love upon the person. And when you retreat to your altar, then you give the fierce calls for the binding of the dweller of that situation and binding of that substance of that person. And now here's the secret. He says, you stay with it a while. You stay with it a while. This, to me, is a secret put right in the middle of everything. I tell you, Vanello can change a fire, a tremendous windstorm coming. He can move it around the city. So I tried it myself. I was on top of the mountain, and this terrible black storm was coming up. We just had a little tent. So everybody got in the tent except myself, and I sat out there and I just held very strongly this will to divide that storm in the middle. And sure enough, it divided and went on both sides, went around us. But I had to stay with it. You have to stay with it till the miracle happens. As the energy begins to work, you can't just throw it at it and walk away. One has to be willing to stay with it in a situation. You must stay with it a while. You bless that one. You call for the deactivation of harmfulness and evil. And you move on always leaving a blessing in your wake, that one may one day pick up that which you have left in his aura. And it might be for him the turning of the way toward the Son of God. Thus, be the presence of my Son Jesus. Be the presence of myself also. I have demonstrated to you in many, many embodiments what the sign and the mark of the Aquarian age man and woman. There is science profound. There is religion that is deep. There is oneness with God. There is a soul freedom that is never rebellion, but a freedom that builds rings upon rings upon rings in the causal body of Aquarius around you, until you draw to yourself the most amazing talents and memories of past embodiments, and those that adepts such as the great divine director might bring to you even in his life. Should you spend a considerable time in his retreat, as he has now opened his retreat to those who are a part of this movement, and to light bearers on the earth who measure up to that invitation. I personally, this is Saint Germain, I personally profoundly am gratified that he has done so, for it is the great divine director who trimmed the sails of Moria, who made me what I am and stood by me. It is the great divine director who has been a part of the training of the Chohans and of the world teachers. This great being of light surely carries such a powerful aura that includes the entire planet, that you would do well to realize that the law of your being, the law of your own perfection and perfectionment, and the law of your divine plan, your divine design for this life, is held in his heart, much as the Blessed Mother does hold in her heart the Immaculate Concept for you. The great divine director does hold that design. Do not think that because you are of a certain age and a certain decade, your life cannot begin all over again. Blessed ones, I say, take a right turn. Take a right turn this day, for you are nearer than you think to that self-mastery. Listen to him. We are closer than you think. He said, I am pleased with what you have accomplished thus far. Let those who know they have not accomplished what they could have accomplished know that I will not hold that against you, for I am marking this day, the day that dawns at midnight on this time of October, October 11. I mark that day as a new cycle for you, a new cycle to discover that continent. It is the continent of your own causal body. Would you not enjoy, beloved, in meditation, to be able to come and go out of your causal body and report back to those who know you are doing your spiritual exercises what you have experienced in those realms of light? Would you not like to be able to record it, beloved? Think then how I raised up Godfrey. Think how I raised up Mark. Think how I called so many and how they have achieved to those high levels. They have begun at birth, not with all the things that they had in the hour of their ascension. Thus, all things are truly possible for you. Do not be stubborn, beloved ones. Stubbornness is surely something that deprives you of the right of self-knowledge. You can be a stubborn independent. You can be so stubborn in defense of the personhood that you regard to be your private use in private, that you can miss entirely the self of yours, the capital S, the real self that is just beyond the stubborn self, ready to galvanize you into the fire of your mission in this age. I am Saint Germain. I have come to you because I love you, because I desire to do many things in the earth, and because I need you in this hour, as never before, to become that fiery presence of Aquarius. Let it be said, beloved, that you in the earth are the pillars of Aquarius already. Now strengthen those pillars, for we would build for the new age, and we count you as a part of that age and its vanguard. Be up and doing. You are mine, beloved, and I am with you. Just call for my presence over you, and you shall no surcease from those burdens that you have carried so long. Let me have them, beloved. I would take them and give you in exchange a new vision and a glory of the dawn that awaits you. I salute you in the name of Portia and of all the seventh ray and the entire spirit of the Great White Brotherhood who love you. Oh, beloved, this has been so revealing to hear you say that I have been there, that I am really a master in my own right. Lay your hand upon me in this moment. Empower me to face my own self and to become very disciplined in being a Chela of Saint Germain. I give you my life, my love, and I accept your peace. In the name Jesus Christ, in the name Saint Germain, I say thank you, thank you, thank you.